Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have another guest in our Remarriage Club series. With me today is Jen Frey. Jen is a coach for women who have had an affair, and she's been divorced and now remarried for 6 years. Jen, welcome to the podcast. Please tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. I am a certified life coach through the Life Coach School. And I really have a passion for coaching women who have been carrying the secret of infidelity so that they can move out of that shame and regret and into a place where they can allow connection and joy.
Oh, that's so good. And I know when we talked about this earlier on, you had referenced the fact that there's just so much help for, I guess you could say, the person whose spouse had an affair. Right. And there's help out on the internet. There's a lot of help for those people. You can Google it. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of help. There's a lot of tools for growth for that person, which, those who have experienced that and experienced what they consider betrayal need that help. But as life coaches, we're here for everyone.
Yeah.
Because everyone needs help. Everyone needs care for their mind, for their soul, for their emotions. And I just admire so much that you've taken this niche and really said, hey, these are my people, and these are the people that I want to help. So tell us a little bit, how did this come about? What's your story? How did you pick this niche? What happened with your marriage?
Yeah. So let's see, where do I start? So I've been married for about 6 years. It's my second marriage. We have a blended family. So he has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. I used to introduce myself and say, oh, I'm Jen, I have 6 kids. And then people would be like, what? You don't look old enough to have 6 kids, or you look amazing. And I felt like it was a little bit of a letdown when I was like, wow, really, I birthed 3 children. So now I introduce myself as we have a blended family. And my husband and I dated for about 3 years before we got married. Prior to that, he was married for 17 years. And I was married about 13 years. So we were both coming in with, marriage experience, but really different reasons for our divorces, different, obviously different relationships. So for me, I married a great guy the first time around, but I think a lot of it was, I wasn't emotionally prepared for what marriage would be. And I really blamed him and expected him to fulfill so many needs for me that now looking back, I can see, but at the time it was like, he should make me happy. He should, right? Or I would be happy if he did these things was a very common story for me. And it's interesting because I can look back now too and see how I didn't take responsibility. And I mean, he tried, this man tried, and it just, right. We know now, or I know now, no matter what he did, it was probably not going to be enough because I never felt like I was enough. And
why? What was the source, or what was the source of that pain for you?
Yeah. I think that feeling came from having cheated early in the relationship and feeling like it was like a thought of, I don't deserve it. I think that was it. And there was also like a block to receiving love coming from that place of like, I don't know how to do this. I frequently had a thought like I'm not made for marriage.
Well,
right. So now, right. Like, okay, so if I'm thinking I'm not worthy of love, I'm thinking I did this horrible thing. I'm thinking, marriage isn't even for me. Like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that we ended up divorced. Right. And expecting him to make all the changes.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's where, to your point of the resources really being for the spouse who has been betrayed. Of course, we want to support that person. And of course, we want them to understand it's really not about them at all. And if we don't have equal support for the person who has done the betraying, like I kind of feel like we're sending a message that the betrayed spouse still has to fix it. And the betrayed spouse still has to be the one to do the work. But really,
Yeah.
both partners need support, especially if you want the relationship to last. And for me, the divorce was not a direct result of cheating, but it was like the residual effect.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, and I know many spouses who have been betrayed, whether it's an affair or financially betrayed or, all the things
Yeah.
that constitute, often feel like counselors and churches and people do put a lot of the burden on them to be the bigger person, to do some work, to kind of work through to forgiveness. And so that you do make a really good point. I think the feeling that people have is that the person who did the wrong doesn't want to work through it.
And sometimes
Or
it's
doesn't have the
true.
capacity to work through
Yeah.
it.
And I think sometimes that's true too. And sometimes they do, and they are, and they're ready to take that responsibility. And I think that's what's so interesting when I'm working with my clients. I have folks who cheated, not even in the relationship that they're currently in. It could have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And they've been carrying those thoughts of not worthy, not good enough. And then as soon as you start Googling infidelity or affair or cheating, there's all this evidence that you are a terrible person. I mean, we have really set the cheater up to be the villain in the story. And I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that. Like, I'm on the betrayal side of my own divorce story, but this really is opening my eyes to, villain is not useful. While it might be true in a person's experience, technically true, it's not a useful tag to put on the other person.
Yeah. And it's not useful to carry that into my next relationship or with my kids or our friendships or work. I mean, when I look back, I can see that like it was such a limiting belief and so subconscious, right? Like had no idea that was in there. And that's what my clients have said too. Like, I kind of thought that I had processed through. I thought that I was on the other side of this, but really it was like I shoved everything in the closet, used my hip to like close that closet door. And I just prayed no one opened that door because there's so much shame and embarrassment. And it's like, I think one of the things we don't realize is that in that betrayal, a lot of us, it's also a betrayal of self. We don't enter into a marriage thinking, well, I'm going to cheat or I'm not going to be faithful. Just like we don't enter into a marriage thinking we're going to get divorced.
Right.
So it like goes against my own, our own values. It definitely went against my values. And it doesn't have to be a physical affair to go against your values, right? It could be emotional. It could be, you mentioned money. And that is such a common one where couples lie about how much income they have or how much money they're spending, or all of a sudden this credit card bill comes in the mail and the spouse has no idea. And again, right? How do we get help? How do we serve both people in the relationship?
Yeah. And also I'll mention parenting because that was sort of my thing in like coming out of the divorce. I had a lot of regret and a lot of guilt about what my children experienced, what my children saw, what they felt, how things played out, not in the divorce itself, but in the marriage. Like while I was trying to put the marriage together and hold it together, the fact that I was doing that created some experiences for them that were not great, that were actually kind of awful. And after the divorce and even moving through my own healing, part of the healing that I had to do was accepting the things that I had done or participated in as a parent in the divorce based on the things that, my ex was doing or whatever. And I was like, I had to process, even though I wasn't at fault, I didn't technically do it wrong. I participated in creating that environment. So I can see where whatever it is we have going on, like, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether you did it or he did it. If it happened and if it's in your brain, we have to process it, or at least ensure that it's not influencing how we're living now.
Yeah.
Now, so how did it influence you? So like after I know you said your divorce didn't happen because of the infidelity, but you still carried that guilt into your next relationship. How did it play out after that?
Yeah. And again, right, it's like so sneaky because it's in the back of your brain. You don't even really know what's going on. But I noticed I started picking fights with my husband, or I noticed he would say, I love you. And I'd be like, I don't know. Right. I mean, this poor guy. And so this is really embarrassing to admit, but I will tell you for the sake of learning. I used to tell my husband that I would rather not love because I didn't want to love and lose. To love and lose felt impossible to me. And he was so shocked by that. Like, what is wrong with you? And I really believe that to be true, because the idea of feeling grief or loss or all the things that I think were probably bottled up inside of me felt like it was more than I could handle. Yeah. And when I like fully processed my shame and my embarrassment and all the things from my previous marriage, and like you said, what I would call like parenting failures. Like I was so busy trying to like make myself feel better or trying to focus on the marriage that my kids did suffer. And that being able to work through all of that as part of my experience, part of their experience, it doesn't mean they're destined for divorce. It doesn't mean that they're going to grow up with these terrible childhood memories, right? It doesn't mean any of those stories that I had created for myself. When I could get through all of that, then I feel like I'm finally at a place where I can fully receive love. And I can honestly say to you that I am completely willing to feel heartbroken and in love, but they kind of go together. You don't get one without the other.
Yeah.
And that was a huge shift for me.
Yeah. So how did you do that work? Like what precipitated you to start that work? Like, were you in therapy? Did you get a coach? How, like, what? Because at least for me, there was a day where I was like, yeah, something's got to change, right? And I started to do this work. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it was when I saw the old patterns bubbling back up. Like, okay, Jen, you've been here before. Like, do you really want to go down this road with this person, with my husband, who I do love and I do want to stay with? So that's when I started looking for help. And we did individual counseling. I did marriage counseling in my first marriage, and it was fine, but I don't feel like it gave us any big breakthroughs. So then I started talking with coaches, found coaching, and I think the difference is in taking responsibility. That was the biggest piece for me. It's like taking responsibility from a place of neutrality. And what I mean by that is it's not judging. Like, you're a terrible person because you did this. It's like, yep, that's what happened. That's what I did. And now I get to decide what to do with it, and continuing to punish myself and continuing to show up, pushing away love. Like that, who did that help? No one. Didn't help me. Didn't help my husband. Didn't help my kids.
Yeah. What's the difference between minimizing something that happened and being neutral about something that happened? Because I mean, I'm a coach. So, when you say like making it neutral, I know what you mean, but I really want us to dig into that, because I think sometimes this is what, causes people to be confused about are you saying this doesn't matter? Like my trauma didn't matter, or the pain didn't matter? And it matters, but there's minimizing and then there's being neutral. Like, could you just talk about that in this context or any context?
Right. I think that's such a good point, because it's like, we're not saying that this should be dismissed, right? I'm not saying that in forgiving myself, I'm not giving myself permission to go, be unfaithful again, or to do something that doesn't align with my values. So I think the learning is like, that doesn't align with my values. That isn't who I want to be. And I don't have to keep telling myself that I'm a terrible person because I did a bad thing. And I think that's the difference. And it's like when you're thinking you're a bad person and you're constantly chasing the feeling of, I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to be a better person. you end up in patterns that don't serve you. Like people pleasing is so common because the person who has cheated is like, well, I don't deserve what I want. I shouldn't get my opinion. So I'll just do whatever they say, even if it doesn't feel right for me, even if it's not what I truly want.
Yeah.
And I think about it, like think about it in terms of like sex in a marriage, right? So husband says he like, let's do it. And the wife is thinking, I don't really want to, but I feel like I should because I did this bad thing. Like who wants obligation sex?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
It's
a trick.
you're processing it from a place of sort of like, this is something that's real, that's happened. And almost like the difference between change and guilt. Like guilt doesn't produce anything good. It's this emotion that keeps you in the cycle because guilt wants to punish you. And so it's just going to keep punishing you. That's what guilt and shame will do.
And I would offer there's a difference between guilt and shame. Like guilt is an emotion that I actually do want to feel because I want to notice like I'm out of alignment with my own moral compass. So guilt tells me that, right? Guilt tells me, hey, you hurt another human and that's not how you want to live your life. Shame tells me you're a terrible person and you don't deserve happiness. Shame tells me like you are fundamentally flawed and don't deserve love. So I like to separate it out because it's like guilt can be useful. We don't need to spin there and stay there. But I think we almost have to process the guilt to get to the forgiveness.
Yes. It's interesting that comes up because in my practice with the person who was betrayed or experienced these things, they feel guilt when they haven't done anything wrong. Like they feel guilt for speaking up. And it's sort of like this, there's shame, but then there's also, I did this thing to protect myself. And now I feel bad that I even asserted myself in any way. So that's kind of interesting.
It is interesting. And
so when you started working with coaches and started working through it, what was your experience in processing those feelings? I know you had said you shut the door on all the feelings. You didn't want to go there because you couldn't handle it.
It's like, I think of like Fred Flintstone opening the closet and the bowling ball like drops on your head. Like, it's going to be so bad. It's going to be so bad. I really don't want to do this. But I had a coach ask me, like, how will you know when you're ready to stop punishing yourself? And that was really the beginning of the healing. Like, how will you know? Because even in getting coached, I didn't actually talk about infidelity for like probably 3 years.
What did you work on instead?
Oh, relationships and parenting and, people at work. It's like sort of this like dancing around thing because it felt so scary. And now it's like being on the other side of that, it's just so different. Like there's just so much more like compassion for all people who make mistakes. Right. And you think about what are mistakes that people make, because it's not just cheating. It's, I don't know, cheating on a test or saying something that hurts someone's feelings. If you've ever had an ill-timed joke or an ill-timed sarcastic comment that it didn't land right for someone. Or anything, yelling at your kid, so painful and so unforgivable. And I think my message is it's not. Like you can still recover. You can still have joy. You can still live an amazing life.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful that you talked about compassion and mistakes, because our expectation that we won't make mistakes is unrealistic. And I think we somehow along the way, we pick up that expectation. Like we're just going to be, especially those of us who want to be nice, good girls. We somehow think we're going to get through life without doing that.
Well, and I wonder if that's what comes up for the betrayed spouses. Like what are the rules? Like I should forgive. I should be good, but it's like, we don't give ourselves room. Like there can be anger. There can be a lot of anger. when you've been betrayed. There can be a lot of frustration. There can be a lot of confusion. And so how do we allow that also? And I think that's where, if you can support the person who has done the cheating so that they understand, hey, this person is going to be upset, and that makes sense.
Yes.
So that they can like give a little grace, give a little compassion, right? So again, it goes back to supporting both people, both parties.
Yes, 100%. And we're all human. We're going to make mistakes, and we all deserve compassion. Now, we don't all deserve enabling or like,
Totally.
We should all take responsibility. However, there is an element of both the betrayed or, the betraying spouse understanding that they're human. Mm-hmm. And I think if we really embrace the fact that we are human beings, it puts all of this in context. Like, mm-hmm. people are going to do things. And our expectation that humans aren't going to do things is not useful.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's interesting sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, when it comes to infidelity, it's like, women are blamed if the man cheats, and then mm-hmm. women are blamed if the wife cheats.
Yes.
We kind of like, we have this cultural, I guess, norm, or like, we allow ourselves to blame the woman either way. So I think in that context, it makes sense that however it plays out, mm-hmm. the woman feels terrible.
Yeah. Why? What is your, like, what was your experience of that? I know you blamed yourself. Did you ever experience any external blame or like, around the infidelity?
I think it's just confirmation, right? When you like try to find resources or counseling, and everything that you read is like, it sounds like, this person is terrible. You should leave them. Don't give second chances. And it just reinforces that negativity and that terrible feeling.
Yeah. What are some new thoughts that you have around the fact that you had an affair? What are some new thoughts that your clients adopt as they move through the process and heal and grow and take responsibility?
I think, let's see, what are my thoughts? I think to myself, I can use this mistake and hold it against myself, or I can use this mistake to move forward, to help other people. Yeah. Right? It's like we always have that choice of what we want to do with our mistakes. We always have a choice. Do I want to learn from this, or do I want to just keep replaying it? It's like you almost make yourself a victim of your own choices.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes
right.
A
and that doesn't feel good. I think another thought I've had is, what do I want to do next? How do I want to live? How do I want to be in the world?
Yeah, because there is so much life left, even after a terrible mistake.
Mm-hmm. Right. And think about if we all had to carry the mistakes that we made. Like my one client who carried this feeling for 40 years, wasn't even married to this person, remarried, and still just felt terrible about it. Like at what point do we release it and allow ourselves to let it go? Not out of permission, but just out of love.
Yeah, 100%. Wow, that's so good. All right, let's talk about dating though.
Okay, that's fun.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about dating and about that in between your first marriage and your second marriage. How did you meet your second husband? Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's sadecurry.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to sadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
So we met online. I had signed up for, a dating app, and I just did a 1-month trial because I was like, well, I don't really want to meet anyone. Like, I just want to hang out and have a good time. And my rule was I'll go out with anyone who doesn't seem like scary. Like, if there's an obvious red flag, it'll be a no, but otherwise we'll go have coffee, we'll go hang out, and we'll see what happens. So I went on, several dates that month. And then he was basically the last date of the month. And I liked his picture, and then he liked it back, that sort of thing. And then I sent a message and I said, I'm not really into the like communicating back and forth. So if you want to meet, great. If not, that's fine. My membership ends in 2 days. Like, that was it. So we agreed to meet for breakfast, and, that was kind of like, the rest is sort of history. And I remember thinking like, well, that figures. I wasn't even looking for this.
Right. And that was going to be my next question. Were you looking? Had you thought about being married again, or were you just?
No.
Did you still have the thought marriage isn't for me at that point?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I carried that into the first couple of years of our marriage. So you combine that plus 6 kids, plus, all these new things, right? Because when you're in a blended family, you don't actually get a honeymoon period, right? So it's like, you're just all of a sudden living with these people.
How old were the children at that time when you got married?
Let's see. So they would have been 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, and 6.
Oh my God. So 6 to 16 and 2 years in between each one.
Yeah. So they were all 2 grade levels apart.
Yeah. You must have been busy.
Yeah. I was busy crying is what I was busy doing. Like, so, something wouldn't go to plan, and I'd be like, we never should have done this. It's terrible. And I'm crying. And my poor husband is like, what is happening? Like, I don't think he knew what to do. No, nobody knew what to do. So I definitely, if I can make a plug, if you are in a blended family, get a blended family coach because you need that support. It's just so much change.
Yeah. So did you have coaching to help you through it?
Yeah, I think so. That was right around the time when I'm like, this is like so crazy. I need some help. So that's when I started coaching. Yeah.
And what are the thoughts or the shifts that you've had around, building your family and blending your family?
Yeah, I think those first couple years, especially, my thoughts were all the people needed to change. If they could just do what I wanted, we would be great. We have to be blended. We have to have all these new traditions. And now, granted, some of that happens over time, right? And I think that's part of it that is a very high expectation for 8 people to come together under one roof.
Yes.
And like, just think like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Like, now, because the kids don't care that we're married. All they know is they have to share bedrooms, and my kids went to a new school, and right, there's so many things changing for them. And for us, it was like, I think I just thought, I don't know, I thought it would be like Brady Bunch, but Brady Bunch had Alice, which we did not have. And those parents didn't have other spouses. The other spouses were out of the picture.
Yeah.
So it's like, just like that complication just sort of grew overnight. And I mean, it was also amazing. And I mean, the kids like really, I guess I'll find out in the future when we ask them, but they seemed to enjoy each other. They got along. We did some fun things. We we did fun trips together. So it's not like it was all terrible, but my brain was so focused on what it wasn't that's where I stayed. And I think that just, I kind of look back with a little bit of regret because I missed some of the really beautiful moments that I can see now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes back to, I think one of the things that the life coach school teaches, which is where you and I are both certified, is that life is 50-50.
Right.
I am a little gray around the actual numbers. I think we can make it like 60-40 with 60 on the good, maybe even a little more. So, but let's just say it's 50-50. That applies to everything.
Yes.
Right. Like you're blending a family. It's going to be 50% amazing. It's going to be 50% hard work, tears, and some really hard
drama.
moments.
Yeah. And that's just me, right? Because then the other 8 people are having their own 50-50 experience.
Yes. And it might be different from yours. Like their whatever is great for them in their great 50% might be what you're thinking is the terrible 50%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so many what? I just want everyone to get along. And I just want it to be I want everyone to want to do our holiday traditions. And the truth is we just had to find our way for what worked for our new family. And I think, it's the same as marriage from the perspective that it takes time. And there's no substitute for that. There's no substitute for just taking it one day at a time, enjoying the things that you can, and building that trust and building that fabric of the family.
Yeah. How did you and your husband make time for each other? Did you have your own were you able to create your own little bubble through that?
Yeah. One, I don't want to say benefit, but kind of one benefit of divorce is every other weekend, the kids were at their other parents. So we had every other weekend to regroup. And again, I think back and on those opposite weekends, I'd be crying because I'm I miss my kids. I don't like when they're not here. And then the weekends we had the kids, I'd be crying because I'm they don't love me. They're not getting along. I was a mess.
Yeah.
And
we have unmanaged brains. Our brains are just going to do whatever it is they want to do unless we wrangle them and say, hey, here's how we want to think about this.
And I just felt looking back, I have so much compassion for that person who just wanted it to work out, who wanted probably a little bit of a fairy tale, who wanted people to feel comfortable and happy, and any sign of distress, my brain lit up the 4th of July, danger, trouble, this is not good. And but again, it's because it was important to me. It's because I cared. So I can have a lot of compassion for who that person was.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It sounds like for you, compassion is really the key to handling all of these. The compassion on whatever's coming up. Let's allow it. Let's let it be there. Let's have compassion on it. And then before trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for a lot of us who are remarried, there's that desire to almost fix what happened in the past with what we're doing in the present. All right, this is it. Now I got my family.
Yes. Right.
And bring in that desire to fulfill perfection or fulfill our past expectations in this new relationship.
Right. Which is super easy on everyone else.
Yes. It only makes them run for the hills.
Right. I know. Yeah. And especially if your partner isn't doing coaching or thought work. And then, right there, which I find so fascinating because my husband is really pretty grounded without it. He's one of my biggest teachers, and he's never done this kind of stuff. He just has that innate knowing of he doesn't make things a big deal. His brain just operates at such a more steady state than mine.
Where do you think that is?
I don't know. I have been trying to figure out because I would like to figure that out, bottle it, sell it. Yeah, I don't know. I think some people that just their life experiences and how they're wired, they just, I don't know. It's more calm or more accepting of what is. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things I've learned when I've seen those people is to not use that against myself. Right. Like sometimes I have clients, because I'm a dating coach, as you know, and sometimes I have clients who feel bad for needing a coach to help them find a partner when other people just waltz onto the app for 30 days, free trial, and found their spouse. And what I do tell them is the same thing you just said. Life experiences, where they've been, what they've learned, their energy, whatever it is, has created that. And there's no shame in someone else needing something else. I needed years of coaching. I needed therapy. I still get coaching. I have a one-on-one coach that I still meet with every week. And I have coaches for other things. And there's no shame in the fact that I need like 2 or 3 coaches at a time when some other people are like killing it in the world without having one coach.
Well, and I also wonder, like, what would it be like if they did have a coach?
Well, then they'd be really great, and I'd really have to hate them. Yeah, and that's right? The truth. Maybe there are areas of their life that they need a coaching. Who knows?
Maybe my husband didn't even have the opportunity, because he was like trying to manage his brain around what was happening with his new wife. Like, yeah. What is happening here? Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting how people just have different reactions to things, and right. None of it is right or wrong. And as much as some people have that like ability to have a more managed brain, I still think everybody can use a coach. I still think everyone has those like deep down thoughts or secrets, or right, like something's in there that you just don't know about yet, and you're still acting from.
Yes, 100%. Jen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your story, and really sharing your wisdom. There's just so much wisdom in your journey and the work that you do. I love how the grasp that you have on our coaching concepts. Like, you are so good with those, the compassion and the acceptance and the openness. And I can just feel that your clients really feel that coming from you. Because I feel it coming from you just on the podcast. And like, you literally have no judgment about anything that could have happened in anyone's life or in anyone's past. So I just want to thank you for bringing that to the podcast. Please remind the listeners what you do, and let us know where we can find you, your links on the internet, if someone wants to work with you, if someone has had an affair in the past, or they have something in their life that they just feel really guilty about and they want to talk to someone in a very non-judgmental space. Please tell us where we can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at jen.frey.coaching. I also have a website, jenfreycoaching.com, and a podcast called the Chasing Redemption Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Also, you say your name Frey, not Frey. Okay, it's Jen Frey.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. So fun.
Absolutely. So thank you, listeners, for your time today. Reminder, Jen Frey is a coach for women who have had an affair. We're going to link up all of her links in the show notes. Please follow her. And if you need someone to talk to about some dark stuff, Jen is your woman. I want to thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.